what does it mean to put in real work? An example of putting in real work is grounding spirits, which is just another way of saying sorcery. Sorcery is the art of grounding spirits or locking spirits into certain type of vessels. For example, that's why we have the whole genie and the lamp mythology. As we know, the genies are the jinn. So you're basically trapping a jinn inside of a lamp made from a special type of metal. Let's just say, for example, bronze. Trapping a genie inside of a bronze lamp or grounding it. So similar to essentially Pokemon. For anybody who has seen Pokemon, how you have to catch the Pokemon with the Pokeballs. And once you capture the Pokemon, now essentially is yours. It's not going to try to run away. You pretty much have tamed it once it allows itself to be caught. So that's pretty much what has been going on for quite some time now. Nothing new about that, which is again sorcery. Sorcery has been going on for a very long time. It's still being done to this day because people clearly are still working with spirits, right? So this is still being done to this day, where you may capture a spirit in the wild, and essentially this is what people were doing, you can say, before pets, right? They called it familiars. This is how people would capture a familiar, and then from that familiar, you were able to interact with it and extract wisdom from it, or extract a certain type of energy from it, depending on what type of familiar it is. Then, to take it to the next level, some people then put those familiars into their pets. So that's why we have stories like, black cats being associated with witchcraft and all that, so on and so forth. Because they would put the familiars into the animals. Now the familiar and the animal become one. Essentially, it's like you're giving the animal a soul now, right? Now the animal has a soul. Now the animal has access to, you could say, spiritual qualities, so on and so forth, right? Essentially, everything we think animals are, but they must be fused with a familiar in order for them to fully activate, which is, again, nothing new about this, right? So what we find is, to be doing any type of work, you must be working with, you could say, spiritual currency in some form or fashion, where it can be something as simple as crafting a seal and then placing that seal inside of a vessel. Let's just say it's a glass jar, for example. You craft a seal, you put it inside of a glass jar. Now, depending on the intent of the seal, you would then fill that glass jar up with items that resonate with the intent or the desire you have. So essentially what you're creating is a vessel, a spiritual currency, energy that can now share a common purpose. And now they're mixing and matching and stirring up. So essentially you have created like a battery at that point, right? You have like this charged vessel that you have just created and that you have been adding energy to. Again, that's just a simpler form of it. Then again, a more advanced form is people actually capturing spirits and, elementals and certain shit like that, right? So this is what sorcery is. You're dealing with spirits, and you're not just dealing with them. Again, you're actually capturing them. Since you are taking care of them, you're giving them life at that point, right? Just like a pet. Like if you take an animal out of the wild and you want to domesticate it, now essentially you have to take care of it. That's essentially the same thing you're doing with the sorcery, right? So now that you take the familiar or the jinn, whatever it may be, out of its natural environment, and you put it inside of you can say artificial environment. Now you have to take care of that energy. Especially if you want it to be friendly with you, like, damn, you just trapped me in this vessel, what the fuck? Like, well, if you essentially create an artificial world for it where it has everything it needs, it's a little different, right? So that's essentially, that's the idea you keep in mind. Like, okay, if I'm trapping the energy, am I going to treat it like a caged animal, or am I going to give it paradise? Especially if I want this to be a friendly interaction. So that's the different levels of sorcery. Like, as they say, how do you treat your spirits? Right? It depends on the way that you go about it. That really determines the outcome. So those are just, quick examples of real work, because you're dealing with living intelligence. Now you're, again, in the 3D, you're going beyond what's going on in your own mind. Now you're pushing energy outside of yourself. Again, through the seals, or working with actual familiars, actual jinn, actual spirits, whatever it may be, right? And then you're using it to gain intelligence you otherwise would not have. Again, building a relationship with this energy instead of just taking it out the wild and treating it like a house rat or some shit. So it becomes a real intimate experience. So it's something not to be taken lightly, because just like any animal, if you don't take good care of it, it'll turn on you, right? However, if you give it paradise, then you ain't got nothing to worry about. So as long as you keep the idea of anything that I'm trying to extract from, I must also give to. Whether it's physical, spiritual, mental, whatever it may be, as long as you understand that law of give and take, the law of exchange, then you have a pretty decent time with spiritual work. As long as you're not one of these people who just try to get something, okay, well, this demon does this demon does that, I want that, and I'm just going to create the seal and just, that's what, give me everything I want, and I'm not going to give anything in return. It's only when you approach the energy like that, the same way like another human being, you approach another human being with your hand out and you don't have nothing to give, they're probably going to look at you crazy. The spirit works no differently, right? So if you come with trying to extract something from it without trying to give in exchange for the wisdom that you desire, then yeah, it probably is not going to work out too well. But as long as you are willing to exchange and essentially create a pact with the energy, forge a bond with it. So now it ain't just like a one-time thing. It's like you're actually forging a bond. Because again, after all, this is our ancestors. So you forging a bond is more than just you, again, accomplishing some type of desire. This is you connecting yourself with the ancient past and gaining insight to things you otherwise would not have access to. There's no other way to gain access to a lot of this stuff without working with the spirits. Again, it's human beings, we're limited to what we know. But the spirits, they're not. So that's why we're able to gain deeper insights with their assistance. So sorcery is just something to help with that, to help essentially activate the spirituality within yourself by you just accessing spirits and you creating bodies, you creating vessels, and you just have a whole spiritual batteries. That's what creates a spiritual reality, right? 93.